One of the first things a narcissist does when they see that you are strong is attempt to reduce your confidence. This does not happen by accident. It is a deliberate response to feeling threatened by your sense of identity and self-worth. A person who knows who they are is difficult to manipulate. A person who believes in their abilities does not constantly seek validation from others. A person who understands their value cannot easily be intimidated into surrendering their boundaries. This kind of person represents a challenge to the narcissist because their usual methods of control become ineffective. Understand this principle. People who cannot control themselves often seek to control others. When they discover that you think independently, make your own decisions, and refuse to define yourself according to their opinions, they begin to experience discomfort. Your confidence becomes a reminder that they cannot dictate your reality. This is why they may begin criticizing things that once seemed acceptable. They may make negative comments about your appearance, your intelligence, your ambitions, or your accomplishments. Sometimes the remarks are direct. Other times they are subtle and disguised as jokes or advice. They may say things like, "You think too highly of yourself," or "You're not as talented as you believe." These statements are rarely about discovering the truth about you. Their purpose is to create uncertainty within you. Why is uncertainty so important to a narcissist? Because doubt weakens resistance. The moment you begin questioning your abilities, you become more dependent on external approval. When people lose confidence in themselves, they become easier to influence. They start looking to others to define their value and direction. The narcissist understands this, whether consciously or unconsciously, and therefore attempts to shake your self-belief. But confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is agreement with your potential. It is the recognition that you possess gifts, abilities, and purpose. It is understanding that your worth is not determined by someone else's opinion. Arrogance says, "I am better than everyone else." Confidence says, "I know who I am and I do not need to prove my value by diminishing anyone else." Strong people understand this difference. They do not walk into rooms demanding applause. They simply carry themselves with quiet certainty. They understand that their identity is not negotiable. They do not constantly seek permission to believe in themselves. A narcissist often finds this difficult to accept because confident people cannot be easily manipulated by criticism. If you know your abilities, negative comments lose much of their power. If you know your purpose, discouragement becomes less effective. If you understand your value, rejection no longer destroys your sense of self. This is why preserving your confidence is one of the most important responsibilities you have in life. Your confidence is like the foundation of a building. Everything else rests upon it. Your decisions, relationships, goals, and resilience are all influenced by what you believe about yourself. If someone can damage that foundation, everything built upon it becomes unstable. Many people fail to pursue their dreams because someone repeatedly convinced them that they were incapable. Many remain trapped in unhealthy relationships because they no longer believe they deserve better. Many abandon their potential because criticism became louder than their inner conviction. Never allow another person's insecurity to become the architect of your identity. People can only define you if you surrender the responsibility of defining yourself. The opinions of others are real, but they are not always accurate. Someone's criticism may reveal more about their fears than your limitations. Remember that every person possesses unique gifts and capacities. You are not designed to be a copy of someone else. You are given abilities that are meant to be developed, expressed, and used with purpose. Therefore, your confidence should not be based upon comparison. Comparison is dangerous because there will always be someone who appears more successful, more talented, or more accomplished. If your value depends upon being superior to others, your confidence will constantly fluctuate. True confidence comes from understanding that your value is inherent. It is not earned through perfection. It is not dependent upon applause. It does not disappear because someone criticizes you. There will always be people who misunderstand you. There will always be people who question your dreams and underestimate your potential. There will always be voices that attempt to make you feel small because your strength reminds others of areas where they feel inadequate. Do not internalize those voices. Listen to wisdom, accept constructive correction, and remain teachable. But never confuse manipulation with guidance or criticism with truth. Protect your confidence because it is connected to your purpose. The world often benefits when people refuse to surrender their belief in who they are capable of becoming. Every great achievement began with someone maintaining confidence despite opposition, doubt, and criticism. The moment you understand your worth, recognize your potential, and refuse to allow another person's insecurities to define your identity, you become extraordinarily difficult to control. And that is precisely why a narcissist tries to diminish your confidence in the first place. They know that a person who truly believes in themselves possesses a kind of strength that manipulation cannot easily conquer. The moment a narcissist realizes that they cannot naturally influence your thoughts, emotions, and decisions, they usually intensify their efforts to regain control. This is because control is not simply something they enjoy. It is often the foundation upon which they build their sense of security and importance. When you are independent, emotionally mature, and capable of making decisions without seeking their approval, your strength exposes something they find deeply uncomfortable. It reveals that they are not the center of your world. Healthy people appreciate relationships built on mutual respect and freedom. They understand that love does not require ownership and that respect cannot be forced. However, narcissistic individuals often struggle with this principle. To them, independence may feel like rejection, and your confidence may feel like a challenge to their authority. Consequently, when they see that you are becoming too strong to manipulate easily, they frequently increase their efforts to regain influence over you. One of the most common methods is guilt. They may remind you of everything they have supposedly done for you. They may say things intended to make you feel selfish for pursuing your goals, setting boundaries, or prioritizing your well-being. Their message is often subtle. If you truly cared, you would do what I want. This is an important lesson in life. Guilt is not always a sign that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes guilt is simply evidence that you are refusing to allow someone else to control your decisions. Many good people struggle because they mistake guilt for wrongdoing. They assume that feeling uncomfortable means they must be making a bad decision. But growth itself can feel uncomfortable. Setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable. Saying no can feel uncomfortable. Protecting your peace can feel uncomfortable. Discomfort does not automatically mean you are wrong. Sometimes it means you are breaking old patterns that no longer serve your purpose. Another tactic is emotional pressure. A narcissist may become unusually dramatic when they realize you are becoming stronger. They may exaggerate situations, create unnecessary conflicts, or act wounded by choices that have nothing to do with harming them. Why? Because emotional chaos often distracts people from their convictions. When people are overwhelmed by emotion, they become easier to influence. They begin making decisions based on immediate feelings instead of wisdom and principles. This is why emotionally strong individuals learn to pause before reacting. They understand that not every emotional storm deserves an immediate response. Maturity is the ability to remain steady while others are attempting to pull you into confusion. A narcissist may also use fear as a means of control. They may suggest that you will fail without them, that others will reject you, or that your future will somehow suffer if you continue asserting your independence. Their words are designed to create uncertainty, but fear loses much of its power when you understand who you are. People who know their value cannot easily be frightened into surrendering their identity. They may experience moments of uncertainty like everyone else, but they refuse to let fear make their decisions. There is another reason manipulation increases when you become stronger. Your growth changes the balance of the relationship. Previously, they may have relied on your need for approval, your tendency to over-explain, or your willingness to tolerate unacceptable behavior. But now something has changed. You have become more aware. You question unhealthy patterns. You refuse to accept blame for everything. You no longer chase validation. You are becoming emotionally independent. This transformation is powerful because emotionally independent people cannot easily be controlled. They are capable of listening without immediately agreeing. They can care deeply about others while still maintaining boundaries. They can be compassionate without abandoning themselves. This is true strength. Many people think strength means never feeling hurt or never experiencing doubt. But strength is not the absence of emotion. Strength is maintaining your principles even when emotions are intense. Strength is choosing wisdom over pressure. Strength is remaining faithful to your values when manipulation attempts to convince you otherwise. Remember that every time you refuse unhealthy guilt, every time you resist emotional pressure, and every time you make decisions according to truth instead of fear, you are developing a stronger sense of self. And that is precisely why manipulation often increases. The narcissist recognizes that their old methods are losing effectiveness. They sense that your confidence is growing. They see that you no longer need constant approval. They notice that you are becoming more difficult to influence through fear, guilt, or emotional chaos. Do not interpret this increased pressure as evidence that you are failing. In many cases, it is evidence that you are growing. Resistance often appears when transformation is taking place. The tree experiences the greatest resistance from the wind when it has grown tall. The person who knows their purpose often experiences the greatest opposition when they begin living according to their convictions. Therefore, do not be discouraged when manipulation intensifies. Instead, see it as an opportunity to strengthen your wisdom and character. Remain calm, remain clear about your values, protect your boundaries, trust your judgment. And remember this principle: your life was never meant to be controlled by another person's insecurities, demands, or need for power. You were designed to think, choose, grow, and live with dignity. The stronger you become within yourself, the less vulnerable you become to manipulation, and there is tremendous freedom in becoming a person who can no longer be controlled by guilt, fear, or emotional pressure. One of the most common reactions of a narcissist when they encounter a strong person is not always direct confrontation. Sometimes they choose a different battlefield, the battlefield of perception. When they realize they cannot control your mind, manipulate your emotions, or weaken your confidence, they often attempt to influence how others see you. This is why many strong, independent people eventually become targets of gossip, rumors, half-truths, and character attacks. You must understand why this happens. A narcissist places tremendous importance on image. To them, appearances often matter more than authenticity. They are deeply invested in controlling narratives because narratives determine who receives admiration, sympathy, and attention. When you refuse to be controlled, you become a threat to the story they have carefully created. Your strength exposes something uncomfortable. It demonstrates that their influence has limits. It reveals that someone can walk away from manipulation and still remain whole. That reality can be extremely disturbing to a person who depends on control to feel significant. Because they cannot dominate your character, they may attempt to damage your reputation. This is why they may tell others that you are difficult, arrogant, selfish, ungrateful, or unstable. They may carefully omit important facts and present themselves as victims. They may share private conversations out of context or spread subtle suggestions designed to create doubt about your integrity. Why do they do this? Because if they cannot change who you are, they hope to change how people perceive you. Many strong people become deeply wounded at this stage because they expect truth to speak for itself immediately. They cannot understand why people believe false stories or why others suddenly treat them differently. They feel betrayed and misunderstood. But there is an important principle you must learn. Not everyone who listens to accusations possesses the wisdom to investigate them. People often believe the first version of a story they hear. They sometimes accept appearances without seeking understanding. This can feel incredibly unfair. However, your response during these moments reveals the depth of your maturity. A strong person does not spend every waking moment chasing approval or trying to force everyone to understand their side. Why? Because there comes a point where you realize something profound. You cannot control another person's opinion of you. You can only control your character. Character is who you are when nobody is watching. Character is your commitment to honesty when deception would be easier. Character is your decision to remain respectful even when others are disrespectful. Character is your willingness to remain true to your values even when lies seem to be winning. The reason character matters so much is because reputation can change overnight. One rumor can damage it. One misunderstanding can affect it. One false accusation can challenge it. But character remains rooted in something deeper. Character does not depend upon applause. Character does not depend upon popularity. Character does not depend upon public opinion. Character is built from principles, and principles have endurance. There is another lesson here that many people never learn. When someone is determined to misunderstand you, no amount of explanation may satisfy them. You could provide evidence, defend yourself tirelessly, and argue every accusation, yet some people will still believe what they have already decided to believe. This is why wisdom is necessary. Not every attack deserves your energy. Not every accusation requires your defense. Not every misunderstanding requires your participation. Sometimes your greatest response is consistency. Continue living with integrity. Continue speaking truthfully. Continue treating people respectfully. Continue honoring your principles. Over time, patterns reveal themselves. Truth has remarkable endurance. Lies often require constant maintenance. Deception demands continual adjustments. False narratives eventually begin to crack under the weight of their own inconsistencies. Meanwhile, genuine character becomes increasingly visible. Think about a tree during a storm. The storm may shake its branches and strip away some leaves, but if the roots are deep, the tree remains standing. In the same way, false accusations and misunderstandings may shake your emotions temporarily, but if your identity is rooted in principles rather than public approval, you remain standing. Never allow another person's attempt to destroy your image to convince you that you have lost your worth. Your value does not decrease because someone fails to recognize it. Your integrity does not disappear because someone questions it. Your purpose does not end because someone speaks against you. In fact, some of the strongest people you will ever meet have walked through seasons of misunderstanding. They have experienced betrayal, false accusations, and attacks on their reputation. Yet they emerged wiser because they learned an important lesson. Peace comes when you stop living for the management of appearances and start living for the development of character. The narcissist may try to recruit others against you. They may attempt to isolate you or create confusion about who you really are. But never forget this truth. A lie may travel quickly, but character travels far. If you remain grounded in integrity, patient in adversity, and committed to truth, time often becomes your greatest ally. Eventually, people begin to see patterns. They begin to notice inconsistencies. They begin to recognize authenticity. And even if some never do, you still possess something infinitely more valuable than a perfect reputation. You possess a clear conscience, unwavering principles, and a character that cannot be manipulated or taken away from you. One of the clearest signs that a narcissist sees you as strong is that they begin testing your boundaries repeatedly. They do not simply hear your no and move on. Instead, they treat every boundary as a challenge. Why? Because boundaries represent independence, and independence means you cannot be easily controlled. Understand this principle. Every healthy person has boundaries. Boundaries are not walls that keep everyone out. They are lines that protect your identity, your values, your peace, and your emotional well-being. They communicate to others, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and this is what I will and will not accept. A narcissist struggles with boundaries because boundaries remove their ability to dictate your behavior. They want access without accountability. They want influence without limits. They want to decide how much of your time, energy, attention, and emotional resources belong to them. But the moment you establish clear standards, their sense of control begins to diminish. This is why they test you. The testing may seem small at first. You say you need space, and they ignore your request. You communicate something that hurts you, and they repeat the behavior. You decline an invitation, and they pressure you until you feel guilty. You express your needs, and they dismiss them as unreasonable or selfish. These actions are not random. They are questions. Can you be persuaded to abandon your standards? Can you be pressured into silence? Can your convictions be weakened? Can your self-respect be negotiated? Every violation of your boundaries is an attempt to discover whether your no truly means no. Many people misunderstand boundaries because they associate them with rejection. But healthy boundaries are actually expressions of self-respect. They communicate that you value yourself enough to protect your peace and your principles. Think about a nation. Every nation has borders. Those borders do not mean the nation hates its neighbors. The borders simply define its territory and preserve its sovereignty. In the same way, personal boundaries preserve your emotional and mental sovereignty. They define where you end and another person begins. Without boundaries, you gradually lose yourself. You start saying yes when you want to say no. You tolerate behavior that violates your values. You give more than you have the capacity to give. You ignore your own needs to satisfy the expectations of others. Eventually, you wake up feeling exhausted, confused, and disconnected from who you truly are. That is why strong people understand something important. Every time you ignore your boundaries, you teach people that your limits are optional. A narcissist pays attention to this. The first time you compromise your standards out of guilt, they remember it. The first time you tolerate disrespect that you previously rejected, they notice it. The first time you sacrifice your peace to avoid conflict, they recognize an opportunity. Then the tests become more frequent. The requests become more demanding. The expectations become more unreasonable. The manipulation becomes more aggressive. Why? Because people often continue to take whatever you repeatedly permit. This is why maintaining boundaries requires courage. Saying no is not always comfortable. Holding your standards may disappoint people. Refusing manipulation may create tension. Standing by your convictions may cause others to criticize you. But discomfort is often the price of self-respect. You must understand that every meaningful achievement in life requires boundaries. Successful people have boundaries around their time. Healthy people have boundaries around their relationships. Purpose-driven people have boundaries around their priorities. People who protect their peace understand that not everyone deserves unrestricted access to their lives. You cannot build a meaningful future if every person has the power to rearrange your priorities and violate your values. The inability to establish boundaries eventually becomes an invitation for exhaustion. People who never say no eventually become overwhelmed because they are carrying responsibilities that were never theirs to carry. They are living according to the demands of others instead of according to their own purpose. A narcissist may accuse you of being selfish when you establish boundaries. They may say you have changed. They may suggest that you are becoming cold, difficult, or uncaring. Do not be disturbed by this. Sometimes people become uncomfortable not because your boundaries are wrong, but because your boundaries limit their access to controlling you. Remember this. Kindness does not require self-abandonment. Compassion does not demand that you tolerate disrespect. Love does not require the surrender of your identity. A strong person understands that saying no to unhealthy behavior is often saying yes to peace, dignity, and emotional health. Your boundaries are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that you recognize your value. They demonstrate that you understand your life has purpose and your energy has limits. They reveal that you have learned one of life's most important lessons. If you do not define your standards, someone else will define them for you. And the moment a narcissist realizes that your boundaries are firm, your values are non-negotiable, and your self-respect cannot be manipulated, they come face to face with something they fear most, a person who knows their worth and refuses to surrender it. One of the most confusing experiences you can have with a narcissist is trying to understand why they seem to love you one day and reject you the next. One moment, they praise your intelligence, admire your strength, and make you feel like the most important person in their world. Then suddenly, without warning, they become critical, distant, cold, or even hostile. This dramatic shift often leaves people emotionally exhausted because they begin searching for reasons that may not even exist. You must understand that this pattern is rarely accidental. It is a method that creates emotional instability. The purpose of inconsistency is to produce confusion, and confusion makes people easier to influence. A person who feels secure in their identity is difficult to manipulate, but a person who constantly questions where they stand emotionally becomes distracted, anxious, and more likely to seek approval. Think about it. If someone praises you consistently, you appreciate their support, but you remain emotionally balanced. If someone criticizes you consistently, you eventually understand their position and make decisions accordingly. But when a person alternates between affection and rejection, your mind begins to chase answers. You ask yourself, what changed? Did I do something wrong? How can I get back to the good moments? Suddenly, your energy is no longer focused on your purpose, your goals, or your personal growth. Instead, your attention becomes centered on earning someone's approval. This is why inconsistency can become so powerful. It creates emotional dependency. You begin waiting for the next compliment, the next affectionate moment, the next sign that everything is okay again. Without realizing it, you are allowing another person's unpredictable behavior to determine your emotional state. But mature people understand a critical principle. Your value must never depend on someone else's changing opinion of you. A person who knows their worth does not become arrogant. They become stable. They understand that praise is pleasant, but it does not define them. Likewise, criticism may hurt, but it does not destroy their identity. They possess an internal understanding of who they are. This is why self-awareness is one of the greatest forms of protection. When you know who you are, inconsistency loses much of its power. Compliments no longer control you, and rejection no longer defines you. You must remember that people can change their attitudes toward you for countless reasons. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you at all. Sometimes their reactions are influenced by their insecurities, fears, frustrations, or unmet expectations. If you make every emotional shift in another person a measurement of your worth, you will spend your life riding an emotional roller coaster. Your identity is too valuable to be placed in someone else's hands. A tree with deep roots does not collapse because the weather changes. Storms may come, winds may blow, and seasons may shift, but the roots keep the tree standing. In the same way, people with a deep understanding of their purpose remain stable despite changes in how others treat them. You cannot allow temporary approval to make you feel superior, nor can you allow temporary rejection to make you feel worthless. Your worth is not determined by someone's mood. It is not established by another person's ability to appreciate you. It is not increased by praise, and it is not diminished by criticism. The stronger you become internally, the less dependent you become on external validation. This does not mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop surrendering your peace to their unpredictability. You stop chasing acceptance. You stop begging for consistency from people who have shown you they are unable or unwilling to provide it. Emotional maturity means developing the ability to remain grounded even when others are inconsistent. It means understanding that your peace should not rise and fall according to another person's changing behavior. It means refusing to sacrifice your confidence simply because someone else has changed their opinion. Never become so desperate to be valued by others that you forget to value yourself. Never become so focused on winning someone's approval that you abandon your own sense of identity. The moment you understand your worth, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing affection that appears and disappears. You stop interpreting every criticism as proof of failure. You stop viewing another person's inconsistency as a reflection of your value. Instead, you become steady, you become secure, you become emotionally free. And there is tremendous power in becoming a person whose peace cannot be controlled by someone else's changing emotions. One of the most revealing moments in any relationship is when a narcissist realizes that you are stronger than they expected. Strength in this context has nothing to do with physical power, social status, or even financial success. True strength is emotional independence. It is the ability to stand firmly in your identity without needing constant approval from others. It is the ability to say no without feeling guilty, to walk away from disrespect without feeling afraid, and to maintain peace even when someone is trying to create chaos around you. A narcissist struggles with this kind of person because they are accustomed to influencing people's emotions and decisions. They often expect others to seek their validation, chase their affection, or become dependent upon their opinions. But when they encounter someone who remains secure in themselves, they face something they cannot easily understand or control. This is why they may eventually distance themselves from you or become obsessed with defeating you. Sometimes they withdraw because your strength reminds them of their limitations. Every attempt to manipulate you fails to produce the desired outcome. They criticize you and you continue growing. They ignore you and you continue living your life. They attempt to provoke you and you refuse to abandon your peace. They spread negativity and you continue moving forward with purpose. Over time, your resilience becomes frustrating because it demonstrates that their tactics no longer work. Understand this principle. People who depend on control are often disturbed by those who cannot be controlled. Your strength becomes evidence that another way of living exists. You are showing them that it is possible to have self-worth without domination, confidence without arrogance, and peace without manipulation. Your very existence challenges their entire way of relating to people. That challenge can cause them to pull away. They may suddenly become cold, indifferent, or detached. Sometimes this distance has nothing to do with your value and everything to do with their inability to influence you. When a person cannot control your mind, your emotions, or your choices, they may decide to remove themselves because your independence feels like rejection to them. But in many cases, they do not simply walk away. Instead, they become preoccupied with proving superiority over you. They may repeatedly return to your life, not because they genuinely miss you, but because they are unsettled by the fact that you continue to thrive without their control. They may contact you unexpectedly, attempt to provoke emotional reactions, or create situations designed to regain your attention. Why? Because your freedom represents something they cannot possess through manipulation. You must understand that your peace can become deeply unsettling to someone who expects your dependence. There are people who become uncomfortable when they discover that you can smile without their approval, make decisions without their permission, and build a meaningful life without their involvement. Your ability to stand on your own reminds them that their influence has limits. Never underestimate the power of a person who knows who they are. When you understand your identity, you become less vulnerable to emotional games. You stop measuring your worth according to someone else's moods. You stop allowing praise to define you and criticism to destroy you. You become rooted in something much deeper than public opinion or external validation. And this kind of person is extraordinarily difficult to manipulate. This is why you must never confuse someone's obsession with your life as proof that you need them. Often their repeated attempts to return have very little to do with love and much more to do with unfinished control. They are trying to solve a problem that exists within themselves. They cannot understand why you are not responding according to the script they created for you. But your responsibility is not to return to old patterns simply because someone is uncomfortable with your growth. Your responsibility is to continue becoming the person you were designed to be. Continue protecting your peace. Continue maintaining your standards. Continue honoring your values. Continue walking with confidence and humility. Continue building a life that reflects your purpose rather than someone else's expectations. Because one of the greatest achievements in life is reaching a place where your identity is no longer available for manipulation. The truth is that your strength will not attract everyone, and it will certainly challenge people who depend on control. Some will distance themselves because they cannot dominate you. Others may become determined to prove that they still matter in your life. But neither response should alter your direction. Remain grounded, remain peaceful, remain faithful to your principles. Because when you know who you are, respect yourself, and refuse to surrender your identity, you possess a kind of strength that no manipulation can conquer and no criticism can diminish. That is genuine freedom, and once you discover it, you should never trade it for anything.